Have you heard the best time to buy plane tickets is on a Tuesday, or that you should buy your tickets at least 6 months or more in advance? Has your first search for a flight abroad discouraged you from continuing to plan the trip at all and made you feel that you could never afford to go anywhere? On today's episode, we dispel old myths about buying plane tickets and bring you our data-driven tips on how to get the cheapest airfare for whenever and wherever you want to go next.
Welcome to the Travel More podcast.
Each episode, we share custom itineraries, travel hacks, expert advice, and even stories of our past travel failures to help you level up your travel game.
I'm Shelly, a lover of plans, itineraries, and cheap flights. I'm an expert deal finder with one eye always on the budget.
And I'm Bruce, the improviser, ready to pick up where plans fail to turn letdowns into unexpected trip favorites. We're here to bust through barriers that stop you from making your travel dreams a reality.
So book that flight, buy the tickets, and say hello to your next adventure.
This is the Travel More podcast.
Welcome back to the Travel More podcast.
Summer school edition.
Yes, it's time for summer. School's out or almost out.
Yeah.
And we're going to be bringing you shorter episodes with like nice tips, smaller.
Yeah, like succinct episodes.
Yeah, specific. So hopefully you can, learn over the summer and get ready for your next trip.
Yeah, and they're every week as opposed to every other week.
Fancy.
So they're shorter, but they're more often.
Yes.
We'll say that. So this is one of my very favorite topics, which is when to buy plane tickets. I think I get this asked I get two things asked of me very constantly. One is when to buy plane tickets, and the other one is like how to use credit card points.
Right.
Like those are the two things that I get just constantly asked. And I think it's because plane tickets end up being like a pretty big chunk of an expense when you're traveling.
Oh yeah, I think that's what stops people in their tracks.
Mm-hmm.
They just start searching, or they have an idea and you're in that time you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
You look for a plane ticket, or maybe you're not using Google Flights, you're going right to your Delta or something you're used to flying, and the price is ridiculous.
Right, exactly. It's like $1,000 round trip to, Ireland from Boston, and you're just like, oh, never mind. I guess I could never go to Europe.
Yes.
And it's like, when are you looking at that, right? So today we're going to talk about data-driven, times,
practice,
of when you should buy plane tickets. So this is not just our anecdotally oh, we find the best deals here. No, we're literally using flight data from Google Flights. So this is the real deal. We're not going to give you fluff here.
Right.
This is actually when the best time to buy plane tickets is. So the first myth I think we can talk about is the flights on Tuesday.
Dude, I still say this. It's so ingrained in me. It's like the old wives' tale. Like Tuesdays when you buy a flight. I always tell Shelly when we're looking at flights, I'm like, well, should we wait till Tuesday?
You literally say that every time.
I know. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Have you learned nothing from me?
This used to be it used to be true. Okay, so that's the first thing. But it was like when the flights were manually updated, like their prices and everything, like people went in and put like how busy each flight was, so then they would like adjust the prices based on that. Obviously at this point everything is algorithm based, and everything is done automatically, so dynamic pricing is done in an instant.
Right, constantly.
Right, it's not like on Tuesday some person is going in and saying this flight is 75% full, so now we're going to adjust the price to this. That's not how it works anymore. So that's why the Tuesday thing is no longer it's
not relevant.
It's not relevant.
And there's other better ways to shop.
Exactly.
I actually just thought of something though.
Yeah.
Is it true that if you're consistently searching, that your IEP address might be tracked and then your prices could change?
So I was just gonna bring that up. I'm gonna say on this one potentially.
I like
potentially.
That. That's a good political answer.
Thank you. I'll
get back to you.
Yeah. I think that there's a couple of things you can do to kind of watch for flights, and one is putting a tracker on it, and I think you should do that no matter what. So like if next year you want to go in April to Memphis, like if we're going to go back to Memphis in April, then I'm going to go on Google Flights like today and put in a tracker for April of next year just to have it. And in that case, when I get the alert, it's going to be tied to my IP address, so I don't think it matters like in that case. But if you are just searching like for the first time and you're 2 months out and you've searched for like a week in a row, and then you search on the last day and like it's really jumped up, you could try to do it in a incognito browser and see if that like changes anything.
Or use a VPN.
Yeah, I'm not 100% like sold that
I don't know if it
really
does.
is a
I
thing?
think there's got to be some just we've seen it change and then we think, oh, it's because we keep searching.
Right.
But
Like,
it doesn't make sense if you could track it and then we've gotten updates before. So
exactly. So I'm not sold that that's a thing, but I mean, it takes literally a second to check it, so
Right,
you might as
exactly.
well. So yeah, I don't know that that's a thing. So there's a couple of myths there. Now what's not a myth is that it is cheaper to fly midweek. So while it's not cheaper to buy your tickets like on a Tuesday, it is cheaper to fly on Tuesday.
yeah, that's one of our tips we're kind of jumping to.
Yeah.
But it's a good one. If
Yeah.
you're flexible with your days, there's definitely the busy times when people fly out like Friday night.
That's gonna be the busiest.
Right, so it's gonna be
Friday
more
to Sunday
expensive.
is the most expensive like time to
Mhm.
travel.
But like
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Mhm.
arrival departures are
Mhm.
often, and you'll see that if you go on Google and you look at like the calendar,
Yeah.
they're almost always the ones that are highlighted green, which
Yep.
means they're cheap.
Yep. If you can go Wednesday to Wednesday, like it's a week, that's probably the cheapest.
Mhm.
But even if you have to go during weekend or like you have to, one of the times has to be during the weekend, I would suggest Saturday typically is the cheaper one because business people fly Friday to Sunday.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that Saturday is almost like if you're flying during the holidays, we always talk about flying like on Christmas Day is cheaper than flying like Christmas Eve or the day after because a lot of people want to spend wherever they're going to be like on Christmas.
They're
They want to
already
be there. Yeah.
the travel is heavy beforehand. And one other thing to think about too is where people are coming and going from typically.
Mhm.
So like if we're flying to Orlando in Florida, more people are going to be arriving there on like Friday night, Saturday, whereas it may not be as expensive to leave then. But
Yeah.
it is going to be more expensive to leave on like a 3-day weekend, like Monday.
Yeah.
It's because most people are then leaving. So
Right.
just some things. But anyway, why don't we talk about what Google Flight data says? We've already said some of the tips, but let's knock it out with the data.
All right. This is your favorite part.
This is my favorite
You
part.
love some good data. So domestic flights. So U.S., to U.S. You're not going international. The average prices. Now this is gonna like blow some people's minds, and I know some people that like to plan ahead of time are about to lose their minds here. But the average prices have been lowest 38 days before departure. Historic low price is 21 to 52 days before takeoff, kind of depending on time of year, airports, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
I know some people are like 38 days. Like I could never wait until that close to my departure. And it is nerve wracking. Like I will tell you, you're sitting there, you're trying to travel, in 3 months and you're just like watching the price tick up and you're like, I have to do this now. That's where they're going to get you.
Yes, because I've seen that specifically for traveling in the United States, within the United States.
Yes.
I have seen the prices, you're looking months in advance, they're kind of stable, and then they start to go up. And then if you wait a little bit more, everything drops back down.
Yes, but it is very scary to wait for that to happen. So I totally hear, the nervousness around that. But yeah, Google Flight says that the average price has been lowest 38 days before departure. These are all averages though. So don't come at us if you wait for the 38-day mark and you're like, no, it never got cheaper. You got to kind of watch Google Flights. They will, like when you go to search any flight on Google Flights, it will tell you historic low and high prices. It'll tell you what they think in terms of like, is this a high price, low price, average. And then they also will tell you when they expect it to be the lowest.
Right.
So Google Flights, even if you don't book through Google Flights, well, no one books through Google Flights. It's just an aggregator.
It's just the search engine.
Yeah. You have to use it. Like 100%, there is no reason to not be using Google Flights to book flights. So do not book a flight without checking on Google Flights first. All right, international
yes,
flights.
I was going to say, kind of opposite of domestic, international flights, and really we're thinking all from the U.S. right now, so if you're listening from another country, this may not apply.
Right.
But from the United States, if you're traveling abroad, you really want to look as early as possible. Average prices have been lowest 101 days before departure, with the historical low price range is anytime like 50 days or more before takeoff. So in other words, international travel from the U.S., average prices don't meaningfully drop anytime before departure, but they usually start to rise within 50 days of the flight itself.
Yeah. So again, 100 days is not going to sound like a lot. It's like 3 months. And like you think I'm going to Germany in 4 months and I don't have my ticket yet, you feel like you're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
But then really like you're actually in a good spot. Which I know people are sitting there going like, this is just not how I do things because it's stressful.
Because you want to lock it in and have it done.
Right.
Because like literally, if you can't get there, all the other plans are a waste.
Right. But just know that data-wise, like your flights are going to drop off when it gets into that kind of sweet spot of 3 or 4 months out for international flights and about a month or 6 weeks out for domestic flights. But this doesn't always apply.
Right. So then we already talked a little bit about some holidays. But like if we think about Thanksgiving, domestic trips around Thanksgiving, prices have been lowest about 45 days before departure, and the low price range is typically 26 to 59 days out. So if you're flying right before or after the holiday, you really want to look early October.
Yeah. Which again, stressful,
Right?
Because you're and especially with holidays, you really see them creeping up fast, and you're like, this flight's gonna cost me $1,000 to go like 200 miles.
Well, and there's the pressure because you know people are traveling.
Yeah, exactly. But the data says 45 days before. Again, please put your where you're going into Google Flights and let them give you specific data about your destination. So these are all very general kind of they're generalities, right?
Well, yeah,
so they're looking at everything.
We
at
know
once.
the issue of averages, right?
Right.
It is telling us one piece of it,
Yeah.
but there's going to be extremes or outliers or variations.
Exactly. So please, although this is good advice because it's literally coming from the data, go and let Google tell you your specifics.
Right. So then for Christmas, you want to plan a bit further ahead. And I think that's probably because, well, actually, I was about to say, is Christmas a busier time than Thanksgiving for travel?
I think so.
You
but
think
they're
so?
very close.
They are close. It is curious, though, that they say, Google tells us that the lowest prices are 58 days as opposed to 45 for Thanksgiving. And the low price range is between 36 and 72 days out.
Yeah.
So that's when you wanted to look at your domestic Christmas flights.
Yeah, which is interesting because I will say, I feel like a broken record, but it all depends on where you're going. When we went to Orlando for Christmas, I think we bought ours at the end of August, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe the beginning of August for Christmas. And they had been so high and ticking up incredibly high. Like I'm talking like over $500 a person. And we had a family of 5 coming with us. So like that's a lot of money before you even get somewhere. You know, you're at $1,500 or whatever. So, or even more than that. So my point is that we watched it. And then once they hit I think they're like $150 a person, we bought them.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I think they did actually go down, and I was a little like, dang, maybe we should have waited.
That's what I think that I've noticed about domestic travel in the United States is that it's like a fake out for some reason. Like prices are kind of like, that's not a great price, but it's not super high. And then you're far out, right?
Yeah.
From the date, like 3 months plus.
Yeah.
And then it seems to creep up and get more expensive. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to go.
Yep.
And then if you wait for these ranges, everything just like tanks.
Yep.
It goes back down.
I will say though, I never felt bad about that like $150, $175 flight to Orlando, and that was a round trip. I never felt bad about that, even though they did technically go lower. Like for me, that was a fair price and I was willing to pay it to have the peace of mind. So that's another thing, is if you kind of have like in your head, like this feels like a fair price for these tickets to me, and I want to make sure I have them nailed down. So if they hit that price, I'm going to buy them. That is another way to do it, you know, especially if you're traveling on a very not expensive time, but a very busy time.
Right. All right, so some other holiday times or times of year, spring break in the United States, around, and we're still talking about domestic.
Yeah.
And around March and April, lowest prices have been 44 days before departure, and the low price range is 33 to 59 days out. So I'm seeing a pattern here, really. You're thinking about a month, which is still stressful to me.
Yeah.
But again,
6 weeks, something like that,
like what Shelly just said, if you're using Google Flights, you're giving yourself email alerts for your airport, for where you're going, that's the best way to do it. And honestly, if you really are a planner and you want to do this a year before, you'll get to see that trend.
Yep.
And I would feel generally pretty comfortable, unless something's going on in the world that you know is like shaking up flight costs.
Yeah. Which actually has been working in our favor lately. But in any case, last one is summer vacations, which to me is the wildest of them all. And so this is, again, domestic, and this is July or August. So traveling July or August is... The price has been lowest 21 days before departure. So you're within the month window, and it's 21 days. And the low price range is 13 to 43 days out. It's like, that's wild. 2 weeks before you leave?
Yes.
Woo!
Well, I will say, I think people sometimes think that the summertime, really June, July, August, is the busiest time of year to travel. but it's not because everyone spaces out their vacations across 2 to 3 months.
Right. So I suppose like spring break is 1 week and everyone's trying to cram in that 1 week, but summer travel,
it's a little more forgiving.
Yeah. I mean, it is still a very busy time to travel.
And it depends on where you're going, right? Some places do get overwhelmed in the summer. Like I'm thinking Italy.
Right. Well, that's international, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Yes, we haven't gotten to that. But speaking of
trips to Europe, we kind of explained this before, but that 94 days, so like 3-ish months before departure, you should not wait for prices to drop like too much though, because the 50 days or more, they start to go up.
Yes.
So it's the same kind of thing as like Thanksgiving, Christmas, where it's like you got to hit that sweet spot because otherwise they're just going to skyrocket. And then trips to Mexico, Caribbean, we don't have much data on Asia or like Australia. Those are just really expensive. You should be ready to pay money.
You're going to be paying for either more than one flight or these crazy long haul flights.
Yeah.
I would save your points and miles game for those.
Yeah, they're expensive. But trips to Mexico and Caribbean, these are kind of an exception to the broader international trend. Prices for traveling to the U.S. To Mexico and the Caribbean have been the lowest 44 days before departure. So they kind of mimic more of domestic flights, than
I think
they do.
Because they kind of are.
They're close, right?
You think about the size of the United States, going to the Caribbean or Mexico is essentially domestic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of traffic.
Yep. So again, this is the data. This is it's not just us. It's not anecdotally speaking, because honestly, I don't necessarily always wait till these very close time frames because that would give me like a heart attack, I think. So what I do and what I suggest doing is what we've been saying, which is like make those Google Flight alerts. I would kind of have what I would expect to pay for a flight, or what I wouldn't feel bad about paying, and just wait for it to kind of hit that sweet spot and book it right when it comes up.
Yep.
And then be done with it. But just know that if you feel like you're behind the 8 ball, you're probably not, unless you're real close to your trip. So, if you're going domestic, you're 6 weeks out, you're in a great spot. If you're going to Europe and you're 6 weeks out, you may want to book something today.
Yeah, I think that's the key is remembering the international, you got to think much further ahead.
Yeah.
In domestic, you have, there's that sweet spot of kind of close, but usually that's when we see drops.
Yeah, so really quick, just some disclaimers here. Hotels do not work this way. Hotels kind of have like a set number of rooms and then they sell them and they don't necessarily, they don't have a lot of dynamic pricing. It kind of like, it is what it is. Now, the exception to that is like if you get a room, what do you call it? Like a walk-in rate?
Yeah, I think it might be rack rate. I can't remember. Essentially, not every hotel or place will do this, but often if you're, and this is very last minute, this is like the opposite of planning.
Yeah.
But if you don't necessarily need the hotel or you're just going to try this out, if you walk in some places, typically the concierge or the receptionist is allowed to offer the price of the remaining rooms at like the lowest cost. Just like to
of
barely,
the year.
Yeah.
So even if it's the summer and it's like the high time or whatever, and you're getting expensive prices, they can potentially offer it to you at like the middle of the winter rate.
Yes, it's like, and I think they're just trying to fill the house.
Right.
It's kind of like theater, where if you like rush the box office at the very end, they might offer you the really cheap tickets just to get in.
Right, because any unsold room it's
$0 for them.
Right.
But
Bruce used to be a concierge. That's how he knows the secret trick.
And I will say this was a bed and breakfast, so it's very specific. I don't know.
I was gonna say it may have to be an independently owned hotel. Like I don't know if someone at the Hyatt could do that for you.
Yes,
maybe, but
you never know. But again, that's kind of like that's the opposite of planning.
Yeah,
it is kind of fun. Like if you're gonna have a trip that's like that. You might get really lucky with those walk-ins. I would just be very cautious if you're going to like, let's say Fringe Festival in Edinburgh or like a specific event.
I wouldn't be doing that.
Do not do that because you're going to be sleeping on the street.
Yeah.
Or
so actually,
on someone's couch.
Thanks for bringing that up because that was another thing I was going to say is if like, for example, for me, if I'm going to Miami next spring break, and spring break is a crazy time in Miami, I might book that hotel right now because I have all the choices right now for every hotel. So I might book one that I actually like that's at a reasonable price because I know the prices aren't going to fluctuate that much, but I will do it refundable just in case I can't find a good like flight price for that or something changes before like from now to then. But I might go ahead and book it now because it's like the closer you get, the prices aren't going to do a lot, but the availability will.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're going to get, 6 weeks out and everything that's going to be left is either going to be terrible or like really expensive. There's going to be none of those like nice middle of the line like hotels that are a nice price and still pretty nice.
Right.
They're all going to be taken.
So anyway, just a sidebar for hotels, and it's probably something to remember beyond the other tips we gave. If you're going somewhere with an event, it probably changes the rules for everything. You know? So like flights, transportation, etc.
Yep. And then last but not least, my little tiny disclaimer. Remember we said this episode is going to be short?
Yeah.
This is not work for points and miles.
Yeah, so, points and miles is totally different.
Totally different. Points and miles are kind of like hotels. Like they don't fluctuate much. They're dynamic priced like for the season, no matter what. And so the best time to book those is when the availability is high. So that's like 11 months out is really the best time to book flights. And then super last minute. So
yeah,
like,
so I was going to say it's like either a year out or like the day before.
Literally. Like literally a day to 2 weeks before.
They do the same thing as like theaters and hotels that do the rack rate last minute. They just are like, okay, we have opening in first class. Let's just throw some crazy deal out there.
Yep, exactly. Because again, for the same reason, which is if there's a seat on a flight that's not taken, that's literally just money left on a table. It's not like it really costs more to have that person in the seat. Right. So that's why.
If you listen to our last episode the week prior to this, Points Path, I would go back and listen to that because there's some really great pointers about what, using points and last minute deals.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and again link that Points Path link into here, because if you're using Google Flights, you should also be using Points Path.
Yep.
Because then you can kind of compare and see like, is this better to do cash or should I just go ahead and use the points and miles for it? And even if you're not planning on using points and miles right now, just getting a general like kind of trend going in your head of like, this is how much things cost in points and miles is not a bad thing. So I would get Points Path no matter what. It's free and it's easy to use. So
Google Flights, Point Path, and Going.
Yep. Oh yeah, Going for all the
Holy
alerts.
Trinity
it is
right
the
now.
Holy Trinity for us
Yes,
right
for
now.
us.
All right. Well, that is our first episode. Before we spend another 10 minutes yakking, we probably should wrap it up.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, and you'll hear from us in 1 week.
Yes. Next week. We'll see you then.
See ya.
Did you know that every time you book a Disney or Universal vacation, you're paying for a service that you may not even be using?
Really?
That's right. Travel agent costs are added to your Disney or Universal vacation, whether you use one or not.
So you're telling me that I'm paying for something even though I'm not getting the help?
You got it. So next time you want to book a theme park vacation, make your money work for you. By booking with Magic Pass Travel, you'll get our expertise and years of experience without paying any extra and while supporting a small business.
Check out our show notes to find our contact information.
Can't wait to help you plan your next adventure.